Hi guys, Periobanez here. Just wanted to talk today about the gear stats in For Honor and what I believe to be the most optimal gear setup. Gear stats only apply to the 4v4 modes of the game, which would be Elimination, Skirmish and Dominion, if I'm not forgetting any of them. They don't apply to 1v1 and 2v2, so if you only play those game modes, you should only care about your gear based off of looks. However, if you do play Dominion, Elimination or Skirmish at any time, you should care about your gear stats, as they are, from Prestige 3, they are absolutely ridiculous, and they are game changing, pretty much game breaking actually. So I'm going to go into what I believe to be the most optimal build, and I'll explain in as much detail as to why as I can. Now, I haven't planned any of this, so I'll just be doing this as we go along, so I apologize if I mumble at all or repeat myself. So let's get into it. Firstly, just before we do that actually, I just want to give a shout out to the YouTuber under the name of Freeze. He created a video where he showed all of the testing to back up all this information that I'm giving you. I will link his video in my description, so if you want to see any of it in action as to where I got my values from, determining the effectiveness of each gear stat, you can go check out his video. So we'll jump right in. Firstly, I'm going to open up the character customization screen, and I'm going to show you Warlord for a very specific reason. Now, before I get into it, my gear isn't perfect on Warlord. I'm still working on it. I've got Conqueror, Warlord and Lawbringer all at Prestige 3. None of them have perfect gear, so they're all works in progress. I unfortunately upgraded and spent a lot of steel and scavenged materials on upgrading items that I later found out weren't the best stats that I could have done prioritized. So I'm going to show you Warlord. So let's get into this. I'll go down the list. So your choices here are Debuff Resistance, Revenge Mode Duration and Exhaustion Recovery. For this, don't pay attention to what I'm running, it's useless at the moment. What you should value is Debuff Resistance first, Exhaustion Recovery second, and Revenge Mode Duration last. So if you were to do that setup, Debuff Resistance would be near maxed out, Revenge Mode Duration would be the same as my Exhaustion Recovery, and Exhaustion Recovery would be just past halfway. Now, the reason you would do this is because Debuff Resistance, it helps lowering damage on bleeds from PKs, Nobushis and also Valkyries. So it's very powerful versus those classes, and if any of you have ever experienced a Peacekeeper in gear stat mode 4v4 with 108 gear, her bleeds are absolutely horrendous, so you really need max Debuff Resistance in order to stop that. It also lowers the damage from your enemies' feats that they use on you as well, and their duration, I believe, as well. But regardless, Debuff Resistance is the way you want to go here. There's also an unintended bug at the moment, at the recording of this, where the Debuff Resistance lowers the duration on CCs. So usually there are some guard breaks that you shouldn't be able to tech or counter, but if you have max Debuff Resistance, you can do that. So you really want to prioritize Debuff Resistance first. Now, Exhaustion Recovery second. It's not super important. It can be very, very helpful if you're not very good at managing your stamina, but really you're only using it second because you don't want a long revenge mode duration. The reason you don't want a long revenge mode is because the shorter it is, the more often it's going to proc. Now, revenge modes don't start gathering revenge again until after the one that you activated has ended. So if you have max revenge mode duration, your revenge will last 11.2 seconds. On lowest, it will last 6.25 seconds. Now, bearing in mind the shield that you get from when you revenge does not last the full 11.2 seconds on max duration. It cuts out about 3 seconds before the duration ends, so you're completely vulnerable during this time. The base amount on the default line, which is here, as you can see, it'll last for about 8 seconds. So the reason you want to have lower revenge duration than a longer revenge duration is because of what you gain every time you revenge. Every time you revenge, if someone is in the middle of attacking you, obviously it will knock them down, and you also gain a shield. So if you have low revenge mode duration, you can pop 2 times 6 second duration revenges in basically the same time that you could have had 1 long duration. So that means you're getting 2 knockdowns, and you're also getting twice the amount of shields. So this is far superior. And as I said, the shield doesn't last the entire time on the long duration, but it's also how quickly the enemy can burn down your shield. If you've got a max revenge duration, which goes for 11 seconds, that's 11 seconds that the enemy have to hit you and break your shield. Once your shield is gone, that's it. You're basically, you're a sitting duck, and if they're a competent team, they'll keep you guard breaked and CC'd while they're all chipping at you. However, if you pop revenge and it only lasts 6 seconds, it's going to be extremely difficult to not only take off your shield, but also kill you in 6 seconds. And by the time your revenge is run out, you'll have probably gathered enough to pop another revenge. So a low revenge duration is far superior. And if you don't believe me, test it out for yourself. It is absolutely broken. I have played my Conqueror, for example, and my Warlord with a low revenge mode duration. I actually deleted his Helm because I didn't think it was superior at the beginning, but it is far superior. My Conqueror, I believe, has the low duration, and with the feat that the Conqueror has, where he can heal on block, I am literally unkillable. My revenge modes last 6 seconds. During that time, I'm also healing every single time I block. You literally cannot kill a Conqueror with low revenge mode duration. The only way you can beat him is 1 versus 1. But if it's 2v1 and he's getting tons of revenge, you're screwed basically. And just in case you don't know how you get revenge, obviously it's from defensive things, from injury as well. But basically, if 2 people are locked onto you, they don't even have to hit you. If they're just locked onto you, you gain a ridiculous amount of revenge. So basically, on certain classes, you actually want to be outnumbered. It makes you stronger, especially in 4v4. So just to recap, we're finished with the Helm now. Prioritize Debuff Resistance, second Exhaustion Recovery, and lastly, you want very low revenge mode duration. This is the most superior setup for the Helm. Next, we'll go to the chest. Again, I don't have this perfect on my Warlord. I haven't played him in a while. So this is a little bit of preference here. Basically, I thought block damage would be the best stat. I think a lot of people think that. Sprint speed is nice. I love being able to run quick, especially for chasing down those little bitch Orochis and PKs who like to run away from you. With the sprint speed, they're not getting away from you. So I definitely recommend prioritizing sprint speed. However, block damage is basically useless. Again, if you check the YouTube video by Freeze, where he demonstrates what block damage actually does. So what it's supposed to do is it's chip damage. If you attack the enemy and they block it, it still does a little bit of damage to them. This is supposed to increase that damage. However, I don't know if it's bugged, but it does absolutely nothing. So basically it's a useless stat. Now, execution health regen, the reason I chose that as last in the start is because it's not guaranteed. You're not always going to get an execute. So I thought it was kind of useless, but after the information came out that block damage basically does nothing, you might as well take execution health regen. So I believe for the chest, the most optimal setup would be max sprint speed, second execution health regen, and thirdly you should just have low block damage because it basically does nothing. If you are lucky enough to get an execute off, the extra health regen will definitely help you. And obviously the sprint speed is great for hunting people down who like to run away. So I'll actually show you the feat real quick. There may be one exception to this rule, and this is for Warlord. He has a feat, let me just find it. Here we go. Punch through, passive, deal damage on blocked attacks. This character is the only character that has this feat, so maybe block damage is useful on Warlord. However, in the testing that Freeze did, he didn't use a Warlord, but the stat is basically useless. So before you go ahead and invest in gear that has block damage on it, make sure you test it. But personally, I wouldn't even touch it because the other feats are basically better. I would much rather have Fury or Tough as Nails, which is absolutely ridiculous. It makes you a raid boss when you've got Tough as Nails, if you can reach your third feat. But Punch Through, I think it's the worst one. I don't think it's useful at all. So even with that being said, I wouldn't dare touch using block damage. It's basically a completely useless stat. So next we've got the shoulders. Again, this piece is completely wrong for me. I'm gonna have to invest a lot of steel to get it fixed. So basically, block damage resistance, if you have it max, when you block somebody, they will deal 1 damage to you. If it's on baseline and you block somebody, they will deal 2 damage to you. If it's low, like how my revive speed is, they will deal 3 damage to you. So the difference here is 2 damage, so it's a completely useless stat. Just like the block damage previously, this is completely useless. So I would recommend that you go with Stamina Regen Max. This is very nice. Obviously this applies to when you're not completely drained of stamina. So if I attack somebody and I get myself to 10% stamina, this is how quickly it will regen, and it does make a huge difference. It is extremely nice. I believe it regens about 50% faster. So instead of taking like 3 seconds to regen, it will take 2 seconds. It's not too important if you're good at managing your stamina, but it can definitely be the difference between killing someone and not killing someone. So prioritize Stamina Regen. And second, you don't need this stat, but it's nice, especially in team play. So go with Revive Speed second. If you also have the feat for quick revives, you revive people in like a split second. It's ridiculous, and nobody can really interrupt you. Even if they're attacking you mid-attack, you can revive somebody as that quick. But again, I need to reiterate, the block damage resistance is basically useless, so don't use this. Go with Stamina Regen or Revive Speed, whichever you prefer, but have block damage resistance low. You don't need it until Ubisoft, potentially change it. It's basically a useless stat. Okay, weapon. Again, as I said, on my Warlord, this is wrong. It's better if you prioritize defense, followed by attack, then by stamina cost reduction. So the reason why is if you have max attack, your attacks will deal an extra 20% damage from, they just basically from baseline. If you have it low, like how the stamina cost is, if you prioritize it last, your attacks will deal 4% damage less. So basically your choice is -4% or plus 20% damage. However, defense, if you max defense, you gain 24% damage reduction. So basically it's 20% extra attack or 24% damage reduction. Obviously the defense is a superior thing. However, if you have negative defense, the lowest it will go, you'll take an extra 10% damage from baseline. So the fluctuation is much bigger. It's from -10 to 24 versus -4 to 20 on attack, which means the lower this is, the worse off it is. So really you want to really beef it up and make it max. So you definitely want defense first, get that 24% damage reduction. With attack second, you should have around 15% extra damage. You'll lose about 5% damage, but you'll gain 24% damage reduction. So it's just superior. Go with defense over attack. Most characters don't need max attack. It makes all the world of difference if you prioritize defense first, trust me. Now stamina cost reduction, this is subjective. Personally, I think extra damage and extra damage resistance is far superior to stamina cost reduction. It really just comes down to manage your stamina better, know your character, know how many attacks you can throw out. Just for the numbers though, I believe Freeze tested it on a Valkyrie. If you have the base value, you can throw 10 heavies on the Valkyrie hero before you become exhausted. If it's on its lowest, you can still throw 10 heavies. It's basically -6%, I believe. It really makes no difference. However, if you do have it maxed out, you can throw 14 heavies so that would, before you get exhausted, so that would just suggest about a 40% increase on your attacks basically. But again, I really don't think it's better than defense or attack. So try and get a weapon with max defense followed by attack second, and just basically learn your character and learn your stamina cost. Another important point is that if you get too used to having a high stamina cost reduction, if you play a lot of Dominion, when you go into 1v1 and 2v2, you'll find yourself becoming exhausted a lot because you're used to be able to use so many combos or so many heavy attacks or so many mix-ups before you run out of stamina. If you get used to being able to spam a lot more, when you go into a 1v1 or 2v2, like I said, you'll be constantly getting exhausted because of the difference between the non-gear stat modes and the gear stats modes. Next up, we have the Hilt. Obviously they're different for every character. Here I've actually got this piece right, however it is slightly subjective. Feat cooldown reduction, personally for my Warlord it's absolutely useless because I'm using all passives, which I'll show you, and the same on my Conch. Passive, 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 Fire Flask. So I could improve by having this, or I could use auto revive, but I never use it in case I've been thrown off of like a cliff or something, so it doesn't matter anyway. I like Fire Flask. You could use these other passives, but regardless, I think that feat reduction is basically, it's really subjective. You could be playing a class like Berserker who has a lot of traps, and I've seen some great clutch play videos of Berserker players where they have a shitload of traps on the ground and they win like a 1 versus 3. So really it's subjective. However, you definitely want to prioritize revenge mode defense for sure. Now, some people like to do revenge gain by defense. Honestly, it's not really needed. This is extremely hard to measure, so Freeze didn't cover it in his video that I've mentioned previously, but this revenge defense is very important. First off, it affects how big of a shield you get when you pop revenge, and secondly, there's quite an interesting thing. If you were to prioritize this last and have it extremely low, you would actually take plus 15% extra damage even when your shield is gone. So if you ignore this stat, you're basically going to get screwed. People will be dealing an extra 15% damage to you even when the shield's gone for the entirety of your revenge mode duration. So you really want this as high as it can go. When it's on the max, it actually gives you plus 31% damage reduction. So you'll take 31% less damage, as opposed to if you have it low, you'll take increased damage. So I believe you should definitely prioritize this. I mean, getting revenge in 1v1s is nice, but if you get 2v1'd, you don't need the stat. You can have it baseline and you will get revenge from like 2 or 3 blocks. It really doesn't take much to get a revenge. This will only really affect you in 1 versus 1. This is why I prioritize it second. I would much rather take less damage and have a bigger shield than I would be able to getting extra revenges. I don't feel I need revenge in 1v1s. I only need them in 2v2s, and I don't need when I'm being ganged up on 2 versus 1, 3 versus 1, 4 versus 1, whatever it is. I don't need this stat. It's basically useless. Even if you have baseline, you're gonna get revenge when you're outnumbered. It's just how the game is. So you definitely want revenge mode defense. So just to reiterate before we move on, revenge mode defense first, revenge gain by defense second, and then this last for me. However, this is subjective. I wouldn't really know. I guess if you want feat cooldown, I would eat into this. It will only really affect you from a 1v1 standpoint. It won't make a difference in 2 versus 1s. So lastly, on a Warlord, it's a shield. On your other characters, it's something different. This one's perfect, I believe. Slightly subjective. I think throw distance is useless. It's definitely useless on a Warlord. He can run with you for miles. I don't think throw distance affects how far he can push you when you hold the guard break. So revenge mode attack is definitely the way to go. Pretty much for the same reasons as previously. Again, also the same with the revenge gained by injury, as I explained with defense. So basically, if you have max revenge mode attack, you will deal an extra 96% damage. If it's on the lowest, you'll deal 16% damage. extra. If it's on the baseline, you'll do an extra 32% damage. You want this max. It's much better to be hitting like a truck than to be gaining more revenges. Again, like I said, this will make it slightly harder for you to get revenge in a 1v1. However, in a 2v1, this stat is almost useless. You will always get a revenge when you're outnumbered unless you can't block for shit and you just suck at the game. So take the revenge mode attack, deal the extra 96% damage, especially on a character that has mix-ups like a Warlord or a Conqueror like I like to play. You shield bash or headbutt on those characters, they fall over. The next hit you will do will pretty much deal half their health, especially if they're not running defense on their weapon. You will absolutely wreck them in 2 to 3 hits. So definitely prioritize revenge mode attack, followed by revenge gain by injury. This is subjective. I really don't think many people would get used to this. A lot of the long throw distances don't get affected by this. I just don't really feel it outweighs the other options here. So go with the revenge mode attack, and yeah, that's what I believe to be the most optimal setup in the game. I'm not practicing what I'm preaching at the minute on my Warlord because I've kind of fallen out of favour with him. I'm actually enjoying playing the Lawbringer and the Conch much more. My Conch is nearly there. This is absolutely perfect. That's maxed. That's why that's maxed out. This isn't perfect. I maxed it out because I've spent so much steel trying to get this, but I've got max sprint speed, which is what I want. I want execution health regen second, and then I want to get rid of this block damage because it's a useless stat. This item here is actually perfect. That's exactly what you should be aiming for. This is the best you can hope for. Weapon, again, absolutely perfect. Max defense followed by attack, then stamina cost reduction. This here again is perfect. Max shield, max damage reduction when I'm in revenge mode, and then I've got revenge gain by defense. Doesn't really matter, helps in 1v1s, but 2v1s you're gonna get revenge. And my shield is not perfect, so I've got to work on a couple things on my Conch. As I said previously, get the revenge mode attack, revenge gain by injury second, throw distance last. So if you follow these gear stats, and you have the low revenge duration with the very high revenge defense and revenge attack, you will be an absolute monster. So try it out. If you don't believe me, do your own testing. If you have any opinions on why I might be wrong, or some examples of where other stats would be better, just leave a comment below. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed watching the video, and I'll see you guys next time.